There's something in your home right now, something you've walked past 100 times without thinking twice. Maybe it was a gift. Maybe it came with the house. Maybe you picked it up because it looked interesting, a little quirky. But here's what no one talks about. Not everything you bring into your home brings you peace. Some things, no matter how harmless they seem, carry energy that doesn't belong. And sometimes that energy starts to shape the way your home feels, heavy, tense, unsettled. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air change? Like the light didn't quite reach the corners? Like the silence wasn't quiet but thick? It's easy to brush that off. We blame stress, sleep, the weather, but homes absorb more than dust. They hold onto what we don't. Pain, memory, movement that never fully left, and certain objects, yes, even everyday ones, can act like magnets. They hold on to what they shouldn't, or worse, they invite something in. This isn't about fear. This is about awareness, about understanding why a space that should restore you might be quietly draining you instead. I've seen it happen in homes that look beautiful, organized, full of light, and yet something feels off. In this video, we're going to talk about 6 specific types of objects you should never keep in your home. Not because they're cursed, but because they carry weight, spiritually, emotionally, energetically. You don't need to be superstitious. You just need to start paying attention. Because once you feel the difference, you'll never unfeel it. Part 1. Why can a lifeless object attract something not of this world? You don't need to believe in ghosts to feel the atmosphere shift in a room. You've been there, we all have. You walk into a space that should feel familiar, maybe your living room, maybe a bedroom, and yet something feels off. You can't explain it. The air feels still but not peaceful. The light doesn't land quite right. The silence doesn't comfort, it lingers. And somewhere deep inside, your body knows before your mind ever catches up. Something here doesn't feel right. We tend to brush that feeling aside. We tell ourselves it's in our head, it's just the weather, maybe we're overtired. But what if that subtle unease, the one that seems to settle just beneath your skin, has less to do with you and more to do with what's sharing your space? The truth is, everything in your home is doing more than just taking up space. Your furniture, your books, your trinkets, that decorative mirror in the hallway, they are not just things. They are energetic witnesses. They hold on to more than we realize. Every object in your home carries a history. Where it came from, who owned it before, what energy it absorbed, what it silently witnessed. And some objects, without ever meaning to, start to carry weight. A kind of invisible residue, emotional dust. And if we're not careful, that dust builds up. In practical terms, this is energy. And energy isn't mystical. It's physical, emotional, psychological. It's how a room can make you feel safe or drained. How a chair can feel inviting or like something's wrong. How a mirror can feel like a reflection or a portal. When we ignore this, when we treat our belongings as meaningless, we give up the power to shape the energy of our space. And we open the door, sometimes literally, to energies we don't intend to invite. The idea that lifeless objects can attract spiritual energy isn't about superstition. It's about resonance. Just like how a tuning fork vibrates when it hears the right note, an object in your home can vibrate with energies it's been exposed to. Pain, grief, anger, those leave imprints, and objects absorb them like fabric holds scent, like glass catches fingerprints. You may not see it, but it's there. And the more stagnant that energy becomes, the more it settles into the cracks of your home, quiet, patient, invisible. Think about that for a second. An object, a charm, a picture, an old chair, doesn't have to be evil to cause harm. It just has to be unaligned, out of place, forgotten, left too long in a dark corner covered in dust, holding energy that's no longer yours. And in that stillness, it starts pulling. It becomes a magnet, not just for misalignment, but for low vibrations, for sadness, for stagnation. In some cases, for entities looking for an entry point. Here's what most people don't realize. The energy in your home is not neutral. It's always shifting, always reacting. When your space is filled with light, care, attention, energy flows smoothly. But when something interrupts that flow, when one object becomes dense, emotionally or spiritually, it clogs the current. It creates a blockage, and that's when the imbalance begins. At first, it shows up quietly. You don't sleep as well. You wake up feeling unsettled. Arguments happen more easily. Your thoughts feel heavier. You feel watched, not in fear, but in discomfort. And when you try to trace it, there's no clear reason, but there is always a source. Sometimes it's that beautiful mirror you bought at an antique store, never wondering what it had seen before. Or that statue you found at a flea market, drawn to its power, not noticing the sharpness in its expression. Or that gift from someone who's no longer in your life, but the memory of the pain still lingers when you see it. These things may be silent, but silence doesn't mean absence. It just means waiting. And here's the most overlooked truth: energy seeks harmony. If something in your home doesn't match your current peace, your current self, it will push back. It will either demand attention or quietly disrupt everything around it. That's when we see patterns of bad luck, a string of sicknesses, missed opportunities, nothing dramatic, just persistent, heavy, like something in the air won't lift. So, can a lifeless object attract something not of this world? It can, but more often than not, it attracts what's unhealed, what's forgotten, what's still hiding under the surface, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. It becomes a point of access for fear, for confusion, for things you didn't invite but accidentally allowed. This isn't about throwing everything out, it's about awareness, about choosing what stays in your home and why, about asking harder questions. Does this object still reflect who I am now? Does it add peace to my space or tension? Do I feel lighter when I look at it, or heavier? When you begin to notice, you begin to shift. And when you shift, your home responds. Because your home isn't just a structure, it's a mirror of you. What it holds, holds you. Part 2, 6 common objects that secretly welcome spiritual chaos. Number 1, charms, amulets, or talismans with unknown origins. It usually starts with good intentions. Someone gives you a charm and says it's for protection. You pick up a bracelet on vacation, handmade, spiritual, maybe even labeled as blessed. Or maybe you scroll past a video that promises a talisman to attract love, wealth, or good luck. So you buy it. You hang it by the door, you place it near your bed, and you don't think twice. But here's the thing about spiritual objects: they are not decorations, they are instruments, and like any instrument, they carry power, but only when used correctly. A charm is not just a pretty object, it's a container. It holds intention, it amplifies frequency, it interacts with the energy around it. And when you bring something like that into your home without knowing where it came from, what it was made for, or what energy it was carrying when it arrived, you're not just inviting mystery. You're inviting confusion. You're tuning your home into a frequency you don't even understand. This isn't about fear, it's about interference. Your home has its own energetic system, whether you're aware of it or not. Every home does. And like any system, it can only stay stable when everything inside it speaks the same language. Introducing a charm with a conflicting energy is like installing a strange radio tower in your living room and wondering why you suddenly can't sleep, why you feel heavy at home, why the energy doesn't feel clean. It's not just superstition, it's spiritual static. I once visited a home where the family had unknowingly created a kind of energetic traffic jam. There were charms from a trip abroad, a bracelet bought at a market, a talisman gifted during a retreat, all placed in different corners of the home, one above the fireplace, one in the pantry, one next to the baby's crib. Individually, they were harmless, but together they were sending mixed signals. Nothing was grounded, and the family, they were constantly exhausted, arguing over small things, struggling to sleep through the night. It wasn't dramatic, it was just off, quietly, persistently off. The moment they removed the charms, and I mean respectfully, not fearfully, something shifted. The air cleared, the house exhaled, and so did they. It's not that all spiritual items are bad, quite the opposite, but intention matters, context matters. A charm designed to ward off spirits in a temple might feel overpowering in a peaceful bedroom. A talisman used for heavy ritual may not belong in a child's playroom. Even items meant for good luck can become disruptive if they don't match the energy of the person or the space. Think of it like medicine. The right remedy for the right person in the right dose at the right time can be healing. But taken without guidance, it becomes a risk. Charms are no different. If you don't know what they were made for, who blessed them, what purpose they serve, or where they belong, you're leaving too much to chance. And here's the deeper truth. When we collect spiritual items out of fear or trend or aesthetic, we dilute their power. We turn something sacred into something ornamental. And in doing so, we forget the most important part. Spiritual tools need relationship. They need clarity. They need reverence. Without that, they don't protect. They confuse, they distort, they disrupt. So ask yourself, do you have something in your home that you don't fully understand but you kept because it looked powerful? Was it a gift you accepted politely even though something about it made you uneasy? Have you noticed changes, subtle or sharp, since placing a charm in a certain corner? These are the quiet signs we ignore, but they matter, because spiritual chaos rarely enters with thunder. It arrives through small things: restlessness, strange dreams, emotional tension with no cause, a weight in the chest that only lifts when you leave the room. These are not coincidences, they are signals, and sometimes all it takes to shift them is to remove one object. Letting go of a charm doesn't mean disrespecting it. It means recognizing it no longer belongs in your space. Wrap it gently. Say thank you. Return it to nature if that feels right. Or simply store it somewhere neutral until you're certain of its place and purpose. Because your home deserves clarity. Your energy deserves alignment. And no charm, no matter how sacred, should ever stand between you and your peace. Number 2, aggressive or distorted statues. Not every statue belongs in a home, no matter how unique or beautiful it may seem. Some were never meant to be placed near your bed, beside your dining table, or across from the couch where your children nap. And yet these objects, twisted in form, fierce in expression, sharp in detail, often end up exactly where they shouldn't be. At the center of a space meant for softness, safety, and rest. That's when the disruption begins, not loudly but quietly, subtly. And most people never trace it back to the figure on the shelf. We often think of statues as art, as statement pieces, as conversation starters. But not all statues are neutral. Some carry an energetic signature so intense, so dominant, that it overrides the natural flow of peace in a home. Statues with angry faces, exaggerated expressions, or forceful postures were often created for very specific spiritual purposes. They weren't designed to be admired, they were designed to guard, to block, to push away dark energy in places where dark energy was already present. Ancient temples, sacred gateways, areas of high spiritual traffic. So what happens when we bring those same figures into the sanctuary of our home? A space that isn't built to defend but to heal? The answer is friction. Energetic tension. A quiet bracing that begins to take root in the room, like everyone in the space is waiting for something. And slowly, that something starts to shape behavior. The room feels colder, louder, more reactive. People argue more. Kids don't want to play there. You avoid sitting in that corner without knowing why. It's not dramatic, but it's consistent. The air just doesn't settle. There was a home I once visited, a modern space full of light and neutral colors. On the mantel above the fireplace stood a large bronze statue of a warrior god, face contorted, sword raised, muscles tensed mid-battle. It was stunning, impressive, powerful, and completely out of sync with the room. The homeowners had bought it during a trip overseas. We loved how strong it looked, they said. It makes us feel protected. But the irony was immediate. The room felt anything but protected. It felt sharp, alert, like even the walls were holding their breath. And the family, constant headaches, restless sleep. A low hum of conflict they couldn't explain. Statues are not just decor, they are energy symbols. They speak to the room. And when their energy is too forceful, too unresolved, or simply misplaced, they throw the balance off. A protective deity placed beside a child's crib can feel threatening instead of comforting. A demon-faced sculpture in a hallway can create subconscious resistance in anyone walking past. Even animals pick up on it, avoiding that area, barking, pacing. It's not paranoia, it's energetic misalignment. It's important to understand. These statues are not evil. They are simply not meant for your space. They were made for environments that need defense. And unless your home is situated on a spiritual fault line, you don't need that level of intensity. Most homes need softness, flow, open energy that supports clarity, connection, and rest. When you bring in a figure that is energetically armed for battle, you invite a kind of tension that never quite relaxes. And if that tension goes unaddressed, it builds. You may begin to feel watched, or unsettled, or emotionally frayed in that room. You may find yourself avoiding eye contact with the statue or feeling a strange sense of heaviness when you pass it. These are the whispers your body gives you when energy is out of balance, and ignoring them over time takes a toll. So ask yourself, is there a statue in your home that feels too intense, too fierce, too emotionally charged? Is there one you admire, but never feel comfortable sitting near? Have your children or pets reacted to a figure in the room in ways you couldn't explain? These are not coincidences, they are cues. Letting go doesn't mean disrespecting the art. It means honoring what belongs where. It means recognizing that beauty and power don't always translate to peace. If a statue feels protective in the wrong way, if it creates more stress than stillness, then its place is not in your home. Thank it. Wrap it carefully. Move it to storage, or find someone whose space and practice can hold it properly. Because your home should not feel like it's bracing for a fight. It should feel like an exhale. Statues don't have to smile to be welcome, but they shouldn't scowl either. They shouldn't dominate. They shouldn't haunt. Your home's energy is shaped by what it holds. And if one figure, no matter how sacred or special, is holding all the tension, it's time to ask if it still belongs. Number 3, old, cracked, or secondhand mirrors. A mirror isn't just a surface that reflects your image, it's a witness. It holds memory, not in a mystical sense, but in the way light carries mood and silence holds presence. Some mirrors in our homes are clean and bright, opening up space, doubling light, offering clarity. But others, they do something different. They feel heavy, off. And if you've ever stood in front of one and felt colder, smaller, or somehow not alone, you know exactly what I mean. We don't often question mirrors. They are part of the background, a piece of furniture, a touch of style. But when a mirror is cracked, discolored, or passed down from an unknown space, especially a space that held pain, grief, or loss, it can begin to hold more than just your reflection. It can hold energy. It can retain echoes of emotion. And over time, those echoes bleed into the rooms we live in. Think of a mirror like a photograph that never stops developing. The images may be invisible, but the emotional residue is real. An old mirror taken from a home where arguments were constant or sadness hung in the walls carries the subtle vibration of that atmosphere. And when placed in your own space, your bedroom, your hallway, your child's room, it begins to emit those same vibrations, even if everything else around it seems perfectly normal. I once met a woman who couldn't understand why her living room always felt off. It was beautiful, sunlit, cozy, well-kept, but guests never stayed long. Her dog avoided the corner where the mirror stood. She herself would sit there, then move for no clear reason. That mirror, it was a gift from a family estate, taken from a room where someone had passed away after years of illness. The mirror had seen sorrow, and without any intention, it was still holding it. This isn't fear-mongering, it's energetic truth. Mirrors are unique among household objects. They don't just reflect, they amplify. And when a mirror is cracked, the energy it reflects becomes fragmented. Just like a cracked window distorts the view, a cracked mirror distorts the emotional feedback in a room. It doesn't just make things look broken, it feels broken. And even if you don't notice it consciously, your nervous system does. You sleep less deeply. You feel uneasy without knowing why. You start avoiding the room without ever naming the reason. Secondhand mirrors carry an even deeper risk, not because they are inherently dangerous, but because you have no control over what they've absorbed. You don't know what they've witnessed. You don't know if they came from a home filled with light or weighed down by sorrow, and once placed in your home, they don't reset. They continue reflecting, but also projecting what they carry. This is why, across so many cultures, mirrors are treated with reverence, covered during mourning, cleansed regularly, positioned with care. Because a mirror is not neutral, it's active. It reflects what is and sometimes what was. And when what is unresolved, broken, or dark, it lingers, quietly, persistently. Some people ask, if the mirror looks fine, can it still affect me? The answer is yes. Energy isn't limited to what you can see, it's what you feel. And mirrors, more than almost any object, are energetic amplifiers. If something in the room feels off, the mirror can intensify it. If the mirror itself carries past pain, it can become the very source of disharmony in an otherwise peaceful space. So what do? First, check your mirrors, not just for cracks or flaws, but for feeling. Does standing in front of it make you feel calm or tense? Do you avoid glancing at it in the dark? Do you notice changes in mood, sleep, or emotional tone near it? These are your signs. Your body knows more than you think. If you have a second-hand mirror, consider where it came from. Was the space it came from healthy, happy, light-filled? If not, it might be time to let it go or at least cleanse it deeply. Sunlight is one of the most effective tools. Place the mirror where it can absorb natural light for several hours. Sound is another. Gentle bells, soft music, or even intentional silence with calm breathing can help reset what the mirror holds. And if the mirror is cracked, truly cracked, it's time to say goodbye. Not because of superstition, but because broken things carry broken energy. Keeping them is like leaving a door halfway open during a storm. You may not know what's coming in, but you know it's not peace. Your home should reflect who you are today, not what someone else lived through yesterday. Your mirrors should bring light, not echo shadows. So if there's one in your home that feels like it belongs to another story, another time, another grief, it's okay to let it go. You're not losing a mirror. You're making space for your own reflection to finally feel like yours. Number 4, dead branches, fake flowers, or decaying wood. Sometimes the most draining thing in a home isn't loud. It doesn't flicker. It doesn't fall off a shelf or creak in the dark. It just sits there, quiet, still, unnoticed. A dry branch in a vase, a dusty garland from last season, a wooden decor piece that's slowly warping in the air. These objects don't seem threatening. In fact, they're often seen as natural, earthy, aesthetic. But here's what most people don't realize. There's a difference between nature and life. A difference between something made from the earth and something that's still energetically alive. Dead branches, artificial flowers, old wooden accents that are chipped or rotting. These are objects that by their very nature no longer hold life force. They are still, and not the kind of stillness that soothes, but the kind that quietly absorbs, blocks, holds things down. The energy around them doesn't circulate. It lingers, it grows heavy. And over time, it creates pockets of stagnation that settle into your space like dust you can't sweep. You might not notice it right away. After all, a dried branch looks harmless. A bunch of fake flowers might even look cheerful, but energy doesn't respond to appearances, it responds to movement, vitality, frequency. And when you fill your home with things that no longer have any of those, the space begins to slow. You begin to slow. In one home I visited, the family couldn't figure out why the dining area felt so uninviting. They barely used the space anymore. Meals became rushed, conversation short, and they didn't know when it had changed. When we looked closer, we found the table's centerpiece, a large bouquet of artificial flowers, faded with time, slightly torn and covered in a thin layer of dust. No one had touched it in years. No one even saw it anymore. But it sat there day after day as the symbolic center of where the family gathered. A lifeless object in the heart of what was meant to be a living connection. This is how energy works, slowly, quietly. It doesn't scream at you, it just reshapes the room until something feels off, until you stop using a space, or you feel inexplicably tired when you sit there, or your plants won't grow nearby no matter how well you care for them. Life avoids where life can't flow. And when your home is filled with too many objects that are energetically dead, the entire house begins to feel like it's holding its breath. Dead branches are especially powerful in this way. They once carried energy. They once moved with wind, drank water, reached for light. And now they don't. When we bring them indoors and call it natural decor, we forget that what we're placing in our homes is the shell of something that used to live. And anything that used to live, but no longer does, needs to be handled with intention. Otherwise, we are keeping pieces of death in places meant for life. Rotting wood, whether it's in an old cutting board, a forgotten stool, or a handmade trinket, is similar. Wood is beautiful when it's cared for, but when it starts to decay, it begins to change the energetic balance of the room. It no longer supports, it leans. It absorbs moisture, energy, light, and eventually it invites in a kind of stillness that becomes difficult to shake. Fake flowers are a little different. They were never alive to begin with, but that's part of the problem. They represent life, color, bloom, beauty, but without the real energy that makes those things feel alive. When they are new, well-kept, refreshed often, they are harmless. But over time, as they fade, gather dust, or sit untouched for months, they become hollow symbols, decorations with no pulse, and your space feels that. This doesn't mean you need to live like a minimalist. It doesn't mean you can't decorate, but it does mean you should ask yourself what kind of energy your decor is offering. Is it fresh? Is it alive? Is it maintained with love, or is it just there, holding space but not holding meaning? Because everything in your home either gives energy or takes it. And if something isn't giving, it's draining, slowly, quietly, repeatedly. So take a walk through your space. Look at the things that haven't moved in a year. The branch you brought home from that hike 2 summers ago. The wreath that never came down. The wood sculpture that used to glow but now just leans and fades. And ask yourself, does this still bring life into my space? Or is it holding it back? Letting go of dead energy isn't about loss. It's about circulation, about making room for things that breathe, that move, that grow. Your home doesn't need to be filled with life, but it does need to be free of what quietly blocks it. Because when energy flows, everything feels lighter, including you. Number 5, gifts from people who hurt you. Some things are harder to throw away than others, not because we still want them, but because they once meant something. A scarf from someone we once trusted. A book from someone we thought would stay. A birthday card written with love before everything broke. These are the kinds of objects we keep not out of joy, but because letting them go feels like admitting something ended. Like drawing a line under a story we never fully processed. But here's the truth most people avoid. When you keep gifts from people who hurt you, you are keeping the echo of the hurt too. You may have moved on, you may have forgiven. You may not even think about that person anymore, but the object remains. And every time your eyes pass over it, even if only for a second, your body remembers. Not always consciously. Sometimes it's just a flicker of discomfort, a quiet heaviness, a pause you can't explain. But that's all it takes. That's how emotional energy lingers. Our homes are not just places where we sleep and eat. They are extensions of us, energetically, emotionally, psychologically. And everything inside them participates in the atmosphere we live in. Some items lift us, some ground us, and some hold us in a past we're trying to outgrow. The problem with these kinds of gifts, the ones tied to fractured relationships or unresolved pain, is that they become emotional anchors. They tether us to people and moments that no longer align with who we are. And worse, they don't stay still. They radiate, quietly, constantly, affecting how we feel in our own space, whether we realize it or not. I once visited a woman whose home was filled with soft colors, beautiful textures, warm lighting, everything designed for peace. And yet there was a tension in the air, a kind of weight that sat low in the space. She didn't know where it came from until we reached the shelf in her bedroom. Tucked between decorative boxes was a delicate bracelet, a gift from an ex-partner who had emotionally shattered her years ago. She hadn't worn it in over a decade, but she hadn't thrown it away either. It was beautiful, she said, and expensive. It felt wasteful to toss it. But it wasn't just the bracelet that stayed. It was the story that came with it. And in keeping it, she had unknowingly created a small altar to a relationship that never really healed. Her sleep improved the very night she let it go. This is the energetic cost of emotional residue. And no matter how pretty the object is, no matter how useful or practical it seems, if it's tied to pain, it carries that pain. If it's tied to betrayal, it holds that disruption. If it's tied to love that turned into silence, it holds the silence too, not always loudly, but enough to bend the atmosphere of your home and the way you feel when you're in it. Letting go of these items isn't about bitterness. It's about alignment. You can honor what the object once meant without keeping the weight of what followed. You can acknowledge the good and still release what no longer serves you. Because healing isn't just something you do in your heart, it's something you do with your space. And sometimes the most powerful shift begins with one small object being removed. If you're holding on to something that makes you wince or remember or tighten your breath, every time you see it, ask yourself, why am I still keeping this? Out of guilt, sentiment, fear of forgetting, there is no judgment in that answer, only clarity. And if you're not ready to let it go completely, that's okay. Start small. Wrap it, store it somewhere neutral. Give it space away from the core of your home. Notice how the air feels once it's moved. Notice how you feel. Because your home should be a place where your past doesn't linger in corners. Where every item reflects the version of you that is present now, not the one who was hurt, betrayed, or abandoned. And the more honestly you curate your space, the more clearly you'll feel your own energy return. Some objects are beautiful, but they are also heavy. And not every beautiful thing deserves to stay. Some were only meant to be part of your story, not your sanctuary. Number 6. Items from places touched by death or illness. There are objects that carry weight, not because of what they are, but because of where they've been. A blanket once used in hospice care. A chair passed down from someone who died in it. A dresser brought home from an estate sale without ever knowing the story behind it. These are not haunted items. They're not cursed, but they are imprinted. And when placed into a living space, especially one meant for healing, connection, and new beginnings, they can shift the emotional air in ways most people never notice, until they do. Most of us have been taught to look at things with practicality. If a bed frame is sturdy, it's a good bed. If a recliner is comfortable, it deserves a spot by the window. We rarely ask, where did this come from? What did it witness? What energy does it carry with it? But your home, whether you believe in energy or not, feels the answer to that question, even if you don't. When an object comes from a space where illness lingered, where death occurred, or where deep sorrow saturated the walls, it doesn't leave that behind just because it changed location. It carries it, subtly, quietly, like a faint scent that stays in the fabric long after the fire. And when that object is placed in a new home without being energetically cleansed or intentionally welcomed, it can introduce frequencies that are misaligned with peace, with life, with rest. You may not feel it at first, but the shift happens. Restlessness, foggy thinking, interrupted sleep. A general heaviness in the room, children become clingier, pets grow cautious. Certain corners feel colder, you forget what used to feel right about the space. And yet there's no obvious cause, just the presence of something that doesn't quite belong. I once visited a home where everything looked beautiful. Modern, clean, quiet. But the family hadn't slept well in months. The couple fought more. Their toddler had started crying every time she was put in her crib, something she'd never done before. Nothing had changed, they said, nothing obvious, until I asked about the crib. It had come from a friend whose own child had passed away in infancy. A gesture of kindness, but it hadn't been cleansed. It had come straight from a place of unimaginable grief into a home still trying to grow its joy. It's not about blame, it's about awareness. You wouldn't wear a hospital gown home from surgery and call it fashion. You wouldn't sleep in sheets used during someone's final days and expect to rest. Yet we do the emotional equivalent all the time, taking in objects that once lived in the weight of endings and asking them to support new beginnings. In many cultures, these transitions are honored. Objects are cleansed with herbs, light, sound. Doors are opened. Prayers are said, not because of superstition, but because of sensitivity. Because what holds the body also holds the emotion, the memory, the frequency of the experience. And death, though natural and sacred, leaves a mark. So what can you do if you suspect an object in your home might carry this kind of weight? Start by noticing how you feel around it. Are you comfortable in that room? Do you breathe differently? Do your thoughts get heavy? Do your dreams change? These are clues. If the answer is yes, if there's even a flicker of discomfort, it doesn't mean you have to throw it away. But it does mean you need to interact with it more consciously. Begin by cleansing it, not just physically, but energetically. Place it in sunlight for several days. Open windows nearby. Burn a soft incense, nothing harsh, just enough to clear what's lingering. Use sound, chimes, soft music, prayer, or even silence with focused intention. Let the object know it is no longer holding sorrow. Let the space know it is safe again. And if the object still doesn't feel right, let it go, not out of fear, but out of respect. Respect for your space, for your family, for the energy you're choosing to cultivate in your home, because healing requires more than love. It requires clearing, making space, choosing what stays and choosing what doesn't. Not everything you inherit is meant to be kept. Not everything gifted should be received. Your home deserves to be filled with life, movement, laughter, rest, rebirth. Objects from places marked by death or deep illness must be invited in gently, if at all. Because a house can only hold so much before the energy begins to overflow. And when it does, it won't speak in loud ways. It'll whisper in disrupted sleep, strained connection, heavy moods. The same way grief lingers long after the funeral, energy stays long after the person is gone. But so does peace, so does clarity, so does light, if you're willing to let it return. Part 3. When energy shifts, your home speaks in whispers. Sometimes your home doesn't feel like yours anymore, and you can't quite explain why. The layout hasn't changed. The colors are still soft. Everything looks fine. But something underneath the surface has shifted. You walk into a room and the light feels dimmer. The air doesn't move the same way. It's as if the space is holding its breath. And if you're honest with yourself, maybe so are you. Energy never announces itself with a headline. It doesn't knock on the door. It lingers in corners. It curls into silence. It rests in the things you stop noticing until they begin to wear on you. And when the energy in your home starts to shift, it won't come with a bang. It comes in whispers, in feelings you can't name, in the weight of a thought that wasn't heavy before. It starts with little things. You wake up tired even if you slept 8 hours. You feel irritable for no reason. The kitchen, once your favorite room, now feels flat. The couch where you used to relax becomes a place you avoid. Conversations with loved ones grow shorter. Tension rises faster. Or maybe the opposite, everyone goes quiet. A stillness too still sets in. You might blame stress, work, age, hormones, the weather, but deep down something tells you it's the house, the space, and you're not wrong, because homes absorb what we don't release. And over time, if we're not careful, our sanctuary becomes a container for what's stuck, what's old, what's grieving, what's broken and unspoken. Energy doesn't disappear. It either moves or it stays, and when it stays, it settles into objects, into furniture, into walls that once heard laughter but now only echo silence. A house that once felt light begins to feel like a place where everything sinks. The plants struggle no matter how well you care for them. Pets become jumpy or withdrawn. Children grow restless at night, crying without cause, clinging tighter when they pass certain doorways. And it's not dramatic, that's why it goes unnoticed, but the body feels it. The nervous system knows. You begin to carry your home in your shoulders, in your breath, in the heaviness behind your eyes, and still you don't realize your house has been speaking to you all along. Energy whispers, and when we don't listen, it finds other ways to get our attention. Accidents, forgotten items, a string of bad luck that's too frequent to be dismissed. You miss the call, the job falls through. You start to feel like you're always behind, no matter how hard you try. Nothing catastrophic, just consistently off. This is what happens when energy stagnates, when we keep what should have been released, when we hold on to objects, stories, memories that are no longer in harmony with our present life. Your home becomes a reflection not of who you are, but of what you haven't let go of yet. And here's what's important. You don't need to understand all the energy to feel it. You don't need to know the origin of every shift to start responding. What you need is presence, attention, willingness to ask hard questions. Does this room feel alive? Do I avoid this space without realizing it? Is something here holding on to more than it should? Because the moment you ask, you start to hear it, the whispers your home has been trying to say. And when you hear it, you can begin to shift it. You don't have to tear your house apart. You don't need rituals or labels or rules. What you need is honesty, sensitivity, a gentle kind of courage, to touch the objects you haven't moved in years, to walk into the room you haven't truly felt in a long time. To pause beside the chair, the corner, the shelf, and notice what rises in you. Is it comfort or is it resistance? If it's comfort, breathe, stay, let the space soften you again. But if it's resistance, if something in you flinches, tenses, pulls back, that's not your imagination, that's your intuition. That's your home telling you it needs clearing, and that's your permission to begin. Because the beauty of energy is that it can be moved, it can be reset, it can be cleansed, not with force, but with awareness. Open the windows, let the wind come through, touch what you've avoided. Light a small candle, play music, burn incense, or simply breathe with intention into the room and say, I'm ready to let this go. And you'll feel it, the shift, the exhale, the light beginning to return, because your home has been waiting, not for you to redecorate, but for you to listen. Part 4, cleansing is how you gently close doors you didn't mean to open. Cleansing isn't about fear. It's not about chasing out spirits or banishing dark energy. It's about restoration, about making space feel like yours again. And sometimes, without even knowing it, we've opened doors, not physical ones, but energetic. Through objects we kept out of guilt, through emotions we never released, through patterns we repeated in silence. The space begins to feel cluttered, not with stuff, but with static, with energy that doesn't move, that doesn't belong. And cleansing is how we begin to close those doors with love, not force. You don't need to be spiritual. You don't need to believe in energy in some mystical way. You just need to notice how your home feels. If a room feels heavy, stale, if you avoid it, if your sleep there is restless, if your mood changes when you enter, it's time to clear. It's time to let the house breathe again. Start small, start during the day when light can assist the process. Open the windows even if it's just for 5 minutes. Let air flow, let something shift. Then move gently through your home. Don't rush, don't purge with panic. This isn't about throwing things out in fear, it's about listening. Which corners feel forgotten? Which objects no longer feel like they're part of your present life? Which areas feel stagnant, like nothing ever really changes there? Touch those spaces, not with judgment, but with presence. Sometimes all an object needs is to be acknowledged, moved, dusted. Sometimes it needs to be thanked and let go. Not everything that enters your life was meant to stay, and that includes what you keep on your shelves, your tables, your walls. Sound is one of the simplest, most ancient forms of cleansing. A bell, a wind chime, a piece of music that lifts the energy in the room. Sound breaks up what's stuck. It awakens corners. It creates movement where silence has settled into tension. Even your own voice can do it. Soft humming, whispered intention, spoken gratitude. Scent is another powerful ally. Burn a gentle incense, nothing too heavy, or use essential oils like lavender, peppermint, or lemongrass. These don't just smell good, they help clarify the space. They help your own nervous system reset while the room does the same. Water can play a role too. A bowl of clean water with salt placed near the front door can absorb dense energy. Rinsing your hands under running water after touching an emotionally heavy object tells your body, we've released that now. Even opening the faucet and allowing water to run for a moment can signal clearing. But above all techniques, the most powerful tool in cleansing is your mindset. If you move through your home with anxiety, trying to get rid of something bad, you're only stirring panic. But if you move with awareness, grounded, intentional, you're telling the space, I'm here now. I see you, I care for this home, and I care for myself within it. There's no script, no ritual you must follow. Cleansing doesn't have to be mystical, it just has to be honest. When you pick up an object and feel that tightness in your chest, you know. When you stand in a corner of the house and feel like the light never quite reaches, you know. That knowing is enough to begin. After cleansing, reintroduce softness. Don't leave the space empty and echoing. Add life. Fresh flowers, open light. A favorite photograph, a crystal if that feels right, or just a moment of silence where you let yourself feel the new air. Let the house meet you again. Let it feel your calm. I've known people who cried during this process, not because it was sad, but because it was true. Because for the first time in years, they allowed themselves to feel what they'd been carrying and then set it down. That's what cleansing really is. It's not about chasing anything away. It's about choosing what gets to stay. You are the keeper of your home's energy. not a ritual, not a tool, you. And when you walk through your home with presence, when you touch the doorknob, the window, the lamp, and bring yourself fully into the moment, you're reminding your house this is a space of peace, of clarity, of life. Cleansing is how you gently close doors you didn't mean to open. And the grace of it is this: you don't need to know which door or how it opened. You only need to choose now, choose stillness, choose movement, choose release. And when you do, the house responds, the energy lifts. The silence feels warm again, the air has room to move, and you'll breathe differently too. Final, your home remembers everything, not because it's mystical or magical or more than wood and paint, but because you live inside it. You cry here, you laugh here, you grow, you age, you fall apart and come back together again right here. And everything around you, every object, every corner, holds a little echo of that. What we've explored in this video wasn't about superstition. It wasn't about fear. It was about energy, your energy, and how it quietly weaves itself into your space, through forgotten gifts, through objects once full of meaning, now heavy with silence, through things we keep just in case, even when they no longer reflect the life we want to live. There is no shame in this. We all hold on longer than we need to the old mirror that reflects more sadness than light, to the dry bouquet from a time we can't quite let go of, to the bracelet from someone who broke our heart, but not our hope. But today, maybe for the first time, you saw it, you felt it. You walked through your space not just with your eyes, but with your intuition. And that matters more than you know, because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the moment you finally take down the frame that's been making your stomach turn for months. Sometimes it's choosing not to dust an object, but to release it, to say this is no longer mine to carry. And in doing so, you return something to yourself, a softness, a breath, a kind of space that doesn't ask anything of you except to be whole. Your home was never meant to hold what you've outgrown. It was never meant to trap your grief or carry someone else's pain or echo a story that no longer belongs to your life. It was meant to rise and shift and evolve with you. So if today has stirred something in you, if you're looking at your home a little differently now, let that be enough. Let it be the beginning. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to let go of what no longer serves. The energy will shift when you do. The room will feel lighter, your own thoughts quieter, and the home, it will start to feel like home again. Thank you for walking this path with me today, for your presence, your honesty, your willingness to feel. May your home reflect your peace. May your space feel safe. May every corner begin to breathe again, with you, not without you. Until next time, take care of your space, and it will take care of you.